we routinely see children who fidget endlessly, act on sudden impulses, or melt down over a minor frustration. For decades, classrooms and society at large have labeled these actions as disciplinary problems or a simple lack of attention. But in the 1970s, an occupational therapist and psychologist named Dr. A. Jean Ayres proposed a different explanation. She developed a framework known as sensory integration theory. Her premise relies on biology rather than behavior. The human brain acts as a central processing hub, taking in massive amounts of environmental data. In a child with ADHD, those incoming signals don't always organize neatly. They collide, creating a neurological traffic jam. The modern world is engineered to satisfy our 5 basic senses, but occupational therapists evaluate human input across 8 distinct sensory systems. Addressing all 8 of these sensory systems allows us to move past punishing a child's lisible behavior, giving us a way to regulate the neurological processing errors causing it. We are all familiar with the classic 5 senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. For a brain with ADHD, these inputs are rarely processed smoothly. The brain tends to either interpret them as severe threats or it ignores them completely. When a child is oversensitive, standard environmental inputs quickly compound. The hum of fluorescent lighting, a scratchy shirt tag, and normal background chatter hit the nervous system all at once, leaving the brain rapidly bottlenecked and the child paralyzed by sensory overload. Conversely, these exact same systems can be undersensitive. A child might fail to register fluctuations in temperature or even a painful scrape. Starved for input, the brain drives the child to seek out extreme sensations just to feel something. Therapists use specific tools to safely channel these seeking impulses, providing chewy toys for oral stimulation or sensory bins that allow for deep tactile exploration gives the nervous system the exact input it craves without causing disruption. For oversensitivity, the environment itself has to change. Establishing a structured, quiet space with dim, warm lighting and no visual clutter gives the brain an artificial filter, allowing it to clear the backlog of sensory data. Managing these 5 senses requires us to stop forcing a child to tolerate physical discomfort. The goal is to adapt the ecosystem around them to reduce neurological friction. The most disruptive ADHD behaviors often stem from senses we cannot see. The 6th system is proprioception, the body's internal awareness of its position in space. It is controlled by receptors located deep inside our muscles and joints. If the proprioceptive system is undersensitive, the brain doesn't know exactly where the limbs end and the physical world begins. This is the child who constantly crashes into walls, bumps into peers, and uses too much force. They are hitting things to feel grounded. Clinical interventions for this focus on strong physical feedback. Therapists use deep pressure therapy, weighted blankets, and heavy muscle work to give the joints the precise input they are searching for. The 7th system is the vestibular system. Located in the inner ear, it acts as the body's command center for balance, spatial orientation, and motion. When a child has a starved vestibular system, they desperately seek out motion. To a teacher or parent, this intense need to spin, rock, or move looks identical to classic ADHD hyperactivity. We can satisfy this biological need for motion by building specific interventions into a child's day. Scheduled movement breaks, wobble cushions for active seating, and rhythmic swinging feed the inner ear the data it requires. What adults perceive as an uncontrollable surplus of energy is a biological cry for spatial and gravitational orientation. The 8th and final system is interoception. This is the brain's ability to accurately read the body's internal physical states, monitoring heart rate, respiration, bladder fullness, and hunger. A child with poor interoception cannot decode their own internal signals. They might experience a racing heart and shallow breathing, but fail to recognize it as physical anxiety. Without that context, a simple biological need escalates into a sudden, seemingly random meltdown. A functioning interoceptive system is a strict biological requirement for emotional regulation. Because it is entirely invisible, it is often a critical factor in a child's internal awareness. Once we understand these 8 sensory channels, we can implement a practical application of the research, The sensory diet. This is a personalized, scheduled routine of sensory inputs meant to prevent overload before it ever starts. A sensory diet strategically alternates inputs throughout a child's day. A therapist might prescribe heavy proprioceptive work, like wall push-ups, immediately before a classroom task that requires intense seated focus. When the brain is repeatedly exposed to these structured activities, it begins to adapt, learning to organize and filter that specific type of input more effectively. This repetitive training leverages neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to physically rewire its processing pathways to handle environmental data with more efficiency. By transmitting clean data without the constant bottlenecking, the child's baseline anxiety drops. Impulsive reactions are gradually replaced by natural self-regulation. When we accommodate all 8 sensory systems, we stop trying to suppress the biology of a child with ADHD. We finally give them the exact physical tools they need to comfortably navigate their world.